I sat frozen in the packed boardroom as Kyle delivered his presentation. Every word that came out of his mouth belonged to me. The triage software system, the user interface design, even the specific medical terminology. I had written it all in my private notebook just 3 weeks ago. The board members leaned forward, nodding with approval. Kyle gestured confidently at the screen, explaining how his revolutionary idea would transform patient care. His voice carried that smug tone I'd grown to hate over the past year of working together. "This system will reduce emergency room wait times by 40%, Kyle announced, clicking to the next slide. Those were my exact calculations from my research. My stomach twisted as I recognized every detail he presented. The CEO, Mr. Rodriguez, smiled broadly. "Kyle, this is exceptional work. We're looking at a fast-track promotion for innovations like this." Applause filled the room. Kyle soaked it up like he deserved every bit of praise. I watched the investors scribble notes, their eyes lighting up with dollar signs. My throat felt dry as I realized the magnitude of what Kyle had stolen from me. But as I watched him bask in the glory of my stolen work, one thought kept me calm. He didn't have the key. 3 weeks earlier, I was debugging code until midnight again. The office felt empty and cold, with only the hum of computers keeping me company. Kyle appeared at my cubicle with 2 cups of coffee, looking concerned. "Elsie, you're killing yourself," he said, sliding a cup toward me. "What's keeping you here so late?" I was exhausted and emotionally drained. My grandmother had just been admitted to the hospital, and the chaos I witnessed in the emergency room sparked an idea. Without thinking clearly, I started sharing my thoughts with Kyle. "I've been working on something personal," I explained, pulling out my leather notebook. "A triage software system that could revolutionize how hospitals prioritize patients." Kyle's eyes lit up with interest. He leaned closer, listening intently as I walked him through my concept. Intuitively, I realize now. His questions were sharp and detailed, far beyond casual curiosity. "You should really show this to leadership," he said as we packed up. Then he paused, that calculated smile creeping across his face. "Or we could develop it together." The coffee had grown cold between us, but Kyle's interest burned hot. I should have noticed how his casual concern had transformed into hungry focus. The way he memorized every detail I shared should have been my first warning sign. I wrestled with Kyle's suggestion for days. Part of me wanted to rush into Mr. Rodriguez's office and pitch my idea immediately. But I was a perfectionist, and the system wasn't ready yet. I needed more research, better mock-ups, and solid data to back up my claims. So I decided to keep building in private. I spent my lunch breaks sketching interfaces and my evenings coding prototypes. Kyle checked in regularly, offering encouragement and asking detailed questions about my progress. "This is brilliant, Elsie," he would say, reviewing my latest drafts. "You're really onto something here." I trusted him completely. We had been colleagues for 2 years, and I thought our friendship was genuine. So I shared small updates, showed him design improvements, and even let him test early versions of the software. One morning, I arrived at my desk to find something unsettling. Kyle's coffee mug sat next to my keyboard, still warm. The handle was turned toward my chair, like someone had been sitting there recently, but I always locked my computer when I left. My heart raced as I checked my files. Everything seemed untouched, but doubt crept into my mind. The security badge logs would later confirm my suspicions, but at the time, I dismissed my paranoia as workplace stress and sleep deprivation. Innovation Day arrived with company-wide excitement. Every department had 20 minutes to pitch new ideas to leadership. I wasn't on the agenda, but Kyle was scheduled for the afternoon session. I wasn't worried initially. Kyle had his own projects to present, and I assumed he would stick to his database optimization work. But as I walked into the main conference room, anxiety twisted in my stomach. Kyle stood at the front with a confident smile, his laptop connected to the projector. The slide displayed a title that made my blood run cold: Revolutionary Patient Triage System. "Good afternoon, everyone," Kyle began. "Today I want to share a breakthrough that will transform emergency healthcare." He started describing my system, my features, my user experience map, even my color scheme choices. Every detail I had painstakingly developed over weeks of research and coding flowed from his mouth like it was his own creation. The audience hung on every word. Department heads scribbled notes. The CEO nodded approvingly. Kyle delivered my presentation flawlessly, having memorized every aspect from our conversations. As the room erupted in applause, I quietly slipped out the back door. My hands trembled as I gripped the door handle, fighting the urge to scream. The hallway felt like it was spinning around me as the full weight of Kyle's betrayal crashed down. I cornered Kyle in the hallway 20 minutes later. My hands shook with anger, but I kept my voice steady. "That was my idea," I said, blocking his path to the elevator. "My research, my design, my code. How could you do this?" Kyle's expression shifted from surprise to calculated innocence. He placed a hand on my shoulder, like we were old friends sharing a misunderstanding. "Elsie, I thought this was our thing," he said smoothly. "You said we could develop it together, remember? I just got it in the door for you. Now leadership knows about your brilliant work." His gaslighting was masterful. For a moment, I almost believed his version of events. Maybe I had agreed to collaborate. Maybe I was overreacting. But then he smiled. That same calculated smile from 3 weeks ago. "Come on," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's build this together. I'll handle the business side, you handle the technical stuff. We'll both win." The way he said it made my skin crawl, like he was doing me a favor by stealing my work. Other employees walked past us in the hallway, completely unaware that my entire career was being hijacked just steps away from their daily routines. I looked Kyle straight in the eye and said the word that would change everything. "No." His confident mask slipped for just a second. I saw a flash of panic, quickly replaced by his usual charm. "Elsie, don't be hasty," he said, reaching for my arm. "Think about the opportunity here. The board is excited. Mr. Rodriguez mentioned promotions." I stepped back, pulling away from his touch. I said, "No, Kyle. That idea belongs to me, and I'll develop it myself." For the rest of that week, Kyle tried different approaches. He brought me coffee, complimented my work, and even offered to split any profits 50-50. But I refused every attempt at collaboration. That's when his desperation started showing. I caught him lingering near my desk when I was in meetings. He asked Haley, my personal assistant, casual questions about my schedule and current projects. I changed my computer password that Friday. I also started carrying my idea notebook everywhere, never leaving it unattended in my office. Something in Kyle's eyes told me he wasn't giving up easily. Sunday night, I added a lock screen to my phone and backed up all my files to a personal cloud account. My instincts screamed that Kyle would escalate his efforts, and I needed to protect everything I had worked so hard to create. Kyle's next move was brilliant and predictable. He turned his charm on Haley, my 23-year-old personal assistant who was still new to corporate politics. He started bringing her expensive coffee and asking about her career goals. He mentioned opportunities for advancement and hinted at bonus money for helpful colleagues. Haley was flattered by the attention from a senior developer. "Kyle's really nice," she told me one afternoon. "He says there might be openings on his team soon." I watched their interactions carefully. Kyle was a master manipulator, making Haley feel special while slowly building trust. He never directly asked about my work, but he steered conversations toward my schedule and current projects. Within a week, Haley was completely charmed. She laughed at Kyle's jokes, accepted his offers for lunch, and shared innocent details about my daily routine. Friday evening, Kyle made his move. He promised Haley a promotion and a significant raise if she could help him with a special project involving my office. That night, I worked late and watched through the security cameras as Haley slipped into my office with her master key. What Kyle didn't know was that Haley had already come to me, conflicted about his requests. We had planned this moment together, turning his manipulation against him in the most elegant way possible. Haley moved quickly and quietly through my office. She knew exactly what Kyle wanted, my leather notebook containing all the triage software details. I watched from the security room as she found it in my locked desk drawer, using her administrative access key. She photographed each page with her phone, then carefully placed the notebook back exactly where she found it. Kyle waited in the parking garage, engine running. 20 minutes later, they met by Kyle's car. Haley handed him a flash drive containing all my research, mock-ups, and code snippets. Kyle flipped through the photos on her phone, his face lighting up with excitement. "Finally," he whispered, pressing cash into Haley's hand. "This changes everything." But what Kyle didn't know was that Haley had also called me an hour before entering my office. She wasn't betraying me, she was helping me gather evidence. While copying my notebook, Haley had made a crucial alteration. She changed a single line of code in the authentication module, a tiny modification that would cause catastrophic failure at exactly the right moment. Kyle drove home that night thinking he held my complete system. In reality, he had a beautiful trap. Kyle dove into implementing the software with obsessive determination. He worked nights and weekends, coding frantically from my stolen notebook. Every interface element, every database query, every user flow, he copied it all exactly. The modified line Haley had planted was buried deep in the authentication system. To Kyle, it looked like standard security code. He implemented it without question, never suspecting it contained a logic bomb designed to trigger during high-pressure demonstrations. I continued my regular work routine, acting like nothing had happened. But I monitored Kyle's progress through Haley, who reported his late nights and growing excitement. "He keeps talking about how revolutionary this system will be," Haley told me. "He thinks he's building a masterpiece." Meanwhile, I used my evenings to build a better version from scratch. I improved the user interface, optimized the database queries, and added features Kyle couldn't imagine. Most importantly, I registered the copyright and applied for patents on the core algorithms. Every line of code I wrote was documented with timestamps and version control. I was building an unshakable legal foundation while Kyle unknowingly constructed his own downfall. Kyle's confidence grew with each passing day. He bragged to other developers about his innovative project, dropping hints about a fast-track promotion to vice president. He treated colleagues to lunch and discussed his vision for leading a larger team. "I've coded something that will change healthcare forever," he told anyone who would listen. "The board is going to love this." He scheduled his final demonstration for the following Friday, inviting investors, board members, and even local journalists. Kyle wanted maximum exposure for his stolen masterpiece. That Tuesday morning, I received a calendar invitation that made me smile. The subject line read, "Kyle Banks, Revolutionary Triage Software Demo." The location was the main conference room. The guest list included our CEO, 3 board members, 2 investors, and the head of our medical technology partnership. Kyle had walked into my trap perfectly. I accepted the invitation and marked my calendar. Friday couldn't come soon enough. That evening, I uploaded my complete software system to a secure cloud server and registered it under my own name. Everything was ready for the showdown. While Kyle prepared for his stolen presentation, I spent every spare moment perfecting my own version. I worked nights and weekends, coding with my own money and resources to ensure complete ownership. My system was leagues beyond anything Kyle could create from stolen notes. I had implemented machine learning algorithms that could predict patient outcomes, integrated real-time hospital data feeds, and designed a mobile interface for paramedics in the field. The morning before Kyle's presentation, I completed the trademark registration for Mediflow and received confirmation of my provisional patents. Every piece of intellectual property was legally protected under my name. I also prepared a devastating presentation of my own. Screenshots, code samples, development logs, and legal documents. Everything needed to prove ownership beyond any doubt. My encrypted backup was stored safely in the cloud under a fake company name I had registered weeks earlier. Even if Kyle somehow discovered my preparations, he couldn't access or delete my evidence. Friday morning arrived with nervous energy filling the office. Kyle rehearsed his presentation one final time while I reviewed my legal documents. At 2 p.m., everyone would discover the truth. Kyle was so confident he invited me to a private preview Thursday afternoon. He wanted to show off his work to the colleague he had betrayed, probably expecting me to beg for inclusion in his success. "Check this out, Elsie," he said, firing up his laptop in the small conference room. "I think you'll appreciate the elegance of this design." His interface looked impressive. The color scheme matched my original mock-ups perfectly, and the user flow followed my exact specifications. For the first few minutes, everything functioned smoothly. Kyle demonstrated patient intake, priority assignments, and resource allocation. He explained features with enthusiasm, as if he had invented every concept himself. Then he reached the authentication module, the section containing Haley's subtle sabotage. The screen flickered once, showed a brief error message, then continued normally. Kyle didn't notice the tiny glitch, but I recognized the first sign of impending failure. "Impressive work," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "The board will definitely have opinions about this." Kyle beamed with pride, completely unaware that his demonstration would collapse spectacularly when it mattered most. Friday arrived with company-wide excitement. Kyle's demo was the highlight of our quarterly innovation showcase, with investors flying in specifically to see his revolutionary software. The main conference room filled with our most important stakeholders. Mr. Rodriguez sat at the head of the table, flanked by board members and potential investors. 2 journalists from medical technology publications occupied chairs in the back. Kyle rehearsed obsessively that morning, running through his presentation 3 times to ensure perfection. The pressure was enormous, career-making or career-ending. An hour before the demo, I received an unexpected email from Mr. Rodriguez. "Elsie, I want you to attend Kyle's presentation. Your technical expertise would be valuable for evaluating this innovation. Please sit in the front row." The CEO's request seemed innocent, but I suspected Haley had whispered something in his ear. She had been positioning pieces on the chessboard for weeks. I replied professionally, "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez, I'll be there." Kyle noticed the email exchange and shot me a nervous glance. For the first time, doubt flickered across his confident facade. But it was too late to back down now. The presentation began flawlessly. Kyle commanded the room with confidence, explaining the healthcare crisis and positioning his software as the solution. His slides were polished, his delivery smooth, and his audience engaged. For the first 5 minutes, everything went according to his plan. The patient intake demo worked perfectly, the priority algorithms functioned correctly, and the resource allocation features impressed the investors. "This system will reduce emergency room wait times by 40%, Kyle announced, echoing my exact words from weeks earlier. Then he reached the critical moment: live patient data processing using the authentication module containing Haley's trap. The screen froze mid-function. Kyle clicked frantically, but nothing responded. Patient records vanished from the display. Error messages cascaded across the interface like a digital avalanche. Silence filled the room as Kyle's masterpiece crumbled before 30 witnesses. His face drained of color as he realized his career was collapsing in real time. One investor muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This is embarrassing." Kyle's hands shook as he tried desperately to recover the system, but Haley's sabotage was too elegant to escape. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Kyle fumbled with his crashed software. Sweat beaded on his forehead while he clicked uselessly on frozen screens. The investors shifted restlessly, checking their phones and whispering among themselves. That's when Haley made her move. She stood from her chair in the back and walked purposefully toward Mr. Rodriguez. Every eye in the room followed her approach as she leaned down to whisper in the CEO's ear. I couldn't hear her exact words, but I watched Mr. Rodriguez's eyebrows rise with surprise. He glanced at me, then back at Haley, who nodded confidently. After 30 seconds of whispered conversation, Mr. Rodriguez straightened in his chair and looked directly at me. "Elsie," he said, his voice cutting through Kyle's panicked troubleshooting. "Could you please join us at the front of the room?" Kyle's head snapped up from his laptop, confusion and fear written across his face. He had no idea what was happening, but he sensed the power dynamic shifting rapidly. I stood calmly, pulled a small flash drive from my pocket, and walked toward the presentation screen. "I believe I can help resolve this technical difficulty," I said. I plugged my flash drive into the projector and launched my own version of the triage software. Within seconds, the screen filled with a polished interface that made Kyle's broken system look primitive by comparison. My software loaded flawlessly, displaying real patient data with smooth animations and intuitive controls. The investors leaned forward with renewed interest as I demonstrated features Kyle couldn't have imagined. "This is Metaflow," I explained calmly. a comprehensive patient triage system I developed independently over the past 6 months. I walked through advanced features, predictive analytics, mobile integration, and real-time hospital communications. The board members took notes frantically as they witnessed actual innovation instead of Kyle's stolen imitation. The difference was stunning. My system worked perfectly, while Kyle's crashed repeatedly. My interface was elegant and user-friendly, while his looked clunky and outdated. Mr. Rodriguez interrupted my demo with an important question. "Elsie, when did you develop this software?" I smiled and clicked to a slide showing development logs, copyright registrations, and patent applications, all dated months before Kyle's presentation. The investors stood up and began applauding. Kyle remained frozen at his laptop, watching his stolen dreams evaporate before his eyes. I clicked to my next slide, revealing the legal documentation that would end Kyle's charade forever. Copyright certificates, patent applications, and development logs filled the screen with undeniable timestamps. I built Netiflow entirely in my personal time, using my own equipment and resources, I explained to the captivated audience. All intellectual property rights belong to me individually, not to the company. I displayed my research notes, original sketches, and code repositories with creation dates spanning back 6 months. Every piece of evidence pointed to clear ownership and original development. The board members studied the documentation while Kyle watched helplessly from the side of the room. His face had progressed from confusion to horror as he realized the magnitude of his exposure. Then Kyle made his fatal mistake. "That's mine," he blurted out, pointing at my screen. "I developed that system. She stole it from me." The room erupted in murmurs as every executive turned to stare at Kyle with disbelief. Mr. Rodriguez's expression hardened into cold anger. "Mr. Banks," the CEO said slowly, "are you claiming ownership of software that Miss Carter has just proven she developed independently?" Kyle's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. The board's fury was swift and decisive. Kyle's wild accusation had sealed his fate in front of the most important stakeholders in our company. Mr. Rodriguez stood and faced Kyle directly. "Based on the evidence presented and your concerning claims, you are immediately removed from your team leadership position, pending a full investigation." The investors whispered among themselves, clearly disturbed by Kyle's attempted theft and dishonesty. One board member shook her head in disgust while another made notes on his tablet. Kyle tried to protest, stammering about collaboration and shared development, but his words only dug his hole deeper. Security was called to escort him from the building while the presentation continued. As Kyle was led away, one of the investors approached me with a business card. "Miss Carter," she said quietly, "I represent Meridian Ventures. We invest specifically in healthcare technology innovations. Would you be interested in discussing licensing opportunities for your software?" 2 other investors followed suit, requesting private meetings to explore business partnerships. Within minutes, I had transformed from unknown developer to the most sought-after person in the room. Mr. Rodriguez watched the interactions with growing respect and perhaps a touch of concern about losing valuable talent. That evening, I contacted the best intellectual property attorney in the city. Kyle's public accusation had crossed a line from workplace politics into potential legal territory, and I needed professional protection. "You have an ironclad case," my lawyer confirmed after reviewing my documentation. "Your evidence of independent development is overwhelming." We decided on a 2-pronged strategy. License the software to interested companies while maintaining complete ownership. Then offer our current company limited access under my terms. Monday morning, I received 3 formal offers from the investors who attended Kyle's disastrous presentation. The bidding started at impressive figures and quickly escalated into serious money. But the most satisfying moment came when Mr. Rodriguez requested a private meeting. He knocked on my door with an expression I had never seen before. Respect mixed with nervous apprehension. "Elsie," he began carefully, "I think we need to renegotiate your position here and discuss licensing terms for your software." The power dynamic had completely reversed. Instead of begging for recognition, I was suddenly in control of a valuable asset that everyone wanted. Kyle's theft had accidentally positioned me perfectly for the biggest career opportunity of my life. Kyle cornered me in the break room Tuesday afternoon, his face a mixture of desperation and anger. He looked like he hadn't slept since his humiliating presentation failure. "Elsie, we need to talk," he said, blocking my path to the coffee machine. "This whole thing has gotten out of hand." His approach was predictably manipulative. He tried to rewrite history, claiming we had been collaborators from the beginning and that his presentation was meant to benefit both of us. "Come on," he pleaded. "We were a team, remember? I was just trying to get your idea noticed by leadership. We can still make this work together." I sipped my coffee calmly while Kyle spiraled through various justifications for his behavior. He offered profit splits, joint ventures, and even public acknowledgement of my contributions, but his desperation only reinforced my resolve. "Kyle," I said finally, setting down my cup, "if you want to discuss my software further, you'll need to contact my intellectual property attorney. Her card is on my desk." His face crumpled as the reality hit him. There would be no reconciliation, no partnership, no escape from the consequences of his theft. I walked away, leaving Kyle alone with his regrets. Wednesday morning, I called Haley into my temporary corner office. Mr. Rodriguez had upgraded my workspace as part of our ongoing negotiations, complete with a view and proper meeting space. "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the comfortable chair across from my desk. "I think you've earned some recognition for your recent contributions." Haley smiled nervously, still unsure how her double agent role would be received now that everything was public. I handed her an envelope containing a promotion letter and a substantial bonus check. My personal thank you for her crucial assistance in exposing Kyle's theft. "Your name will also appear in the special credits section of Metaflow," I continued. "You played an essential role in protecting intellectual property and ensuring justice was served." Haley's eyes filled with tears as she read the promotion details. From personal assistant to project coordinator, with a significant salary increase and her own small team. "I couldn't let him steal your work," she said softly. "It wasn't right." Kyle's manipulation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of gaining an ally, he had created the architect of his own downfall. Kyle's new reality was a harsh lesson in corporate consequences. He was reassigned to a failing legacy project as a junior support representative, supervised by Marcus Webb, a developer Kyle had mocked for being unambitious just months earlier. Marcus took obvious pleasure in Kyle's dramatic fall from grace. Kyle's former authority meant nothing in his new role, where he handled mundane bug reports and customer complaints for outdated software. Word spread quickly through the technology industry. Kyle's attempted theft and spectacular failure became cautionary tale material at developer meetups and industry conferences. His LinkedIn profile, once boasting about innovation leadership, was quietly edited to remove grandiose claims. Job applications went unanswered as background checks revealed the embarrassing circumstances of his demotion. Meanwhile, my phone rang constantly with recruitment offers. A headhunter from Silicon Valley called with an intriguing proposition. "Elsie, we're representing a healthcare startup with serious venture capital backing. They want to build an entire platform around your triage software. Daughter, are you open to discussing a leadership position?" Kyle's sabotage had accidentally launched my career into orbit while destroying his own. 2 weeks after Kyle's presentation disaster, I submitted my resignation letter. After careful consideration, I decided to pursue independent opportunities rather than remain at a company that had initially overlooked my contributions. My exit email was professional but pointed. "Your talent will never thrive in the shadow of ego. I wish you success in creating an environment where innovation is valued over politics." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The board offered consulting contracts, equity positions, and even a counteroffer to become chief technology officer. But my decision was final. I had outgrown this place. My farewell gathering filled the main conference room with colleagues, executives, and even some of the investors from Kyle's failed presentation. Mr. Rodriguez gave a speech acknowledging my contributions and publicly thanking me for my professionalism during difficult circumstances. As I cleaned out my desk, Kyle watched from across the office. His expression was unreadable, but I sensed regret mixed with lingering resentment. I walked toward the elevator, carrying my personal items while the office applauded behind me. Kyle remained at his workstation, isolated and forgotten. The elevator doors closed on that chapter of my life forever. 3 healthcare technology firms entered a bidding war for exclusive licensing rights to MetaFlow. The competition drove the price beyond my wildest expectations, well into 7 figures for a software system I had built nights and weekends. After consulting with my attorney and business advisor, I chose Meridian Health Solutions. They offered the best combination of upfront payment, ongoing royalties, and respect for my vision. The contract signing took place in a downtown law office with more lawyers than I had ever seen in one room. Papers were notarized, checks were transferred, and intellectual property rights were formally licensed. The most ironic twist came when Meridian decided to keep our old company as a client. They would pay monthly licensing fees to use the system Kyle had tried to steal, fees that would ultimately benefit me through royalty payments. Kyle's former employer would now pay me every month to use my software, while Kyle himself remained trapped in his degraded support role. Justice had a beautiful sense of humor. That evening, I celebrated at an upscale restaurant with Haley and my attorney, toasting the successful conclusion of our unconventional corporate warfare. 6 months later, I stood on a stage at the National Healthcare Innovation Conference, delivering a keynote address to an audience of thousands. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was speaking about ethical innovation and intellectual property protection. Ideas are precious, I told the captivated audience, but ideas without execution are worthless. The real value lies in the person who can turn concepts into reality. In the audience, I spotted several former colleagues who had flown in to hear my presentation. Haley sat in the front row, beaming with pride at how far we had both traveled. MetaFlow was now implemented in over 50 hospitals across 3 states, reducing emergency room wait times and improving patient outcomes, exactly as I had originally envisioned. Kyle had tried to steal my future, but he had actually freed me to build something far greater than I ever could have achieved within the constraints of corporate employment. As I concluded my presentation, I delivered the line that had sustained me through the darkest moments of his betrayal. Because the idea was never the product, I was. The standing ovation felt like vindication, but more importantly, it felt like a beginning.